This episode of Out of Spec Reviews is brought to you by Magna. More on that later. Hello and welcome back to another Out of Spec Reviews video. In this video, we are going to be talking about charging the Toyota bZ4X. Now, of course, you know, when we're not near cars and in some random hotel or at the office, we're always talking charging curves, and this has to be one of the most fascinating charging curves I've ever experienced. Not in terms of impressiveness, in terms of how long it takes. So this is going to be an interesting one. Stick with us. We're talking about charging the all-wheel drive bZ4X with the CATL battery. It's the US all-wheel drive version, the one I imagine most people want, from 0 to 100%. We're going to look at the time, the cost, the peak charging rate, and of course, how long you can expect to wait at a charger on a road trip. So let's dig into the charging, but before we do that, let me tell you a little bit about the bZ4X. So the one we tested was the limited all-wheel drive, which is the max version. It's a 72.8 kilowatt hour version of the battery pack by CATL. And that is only the battery pack you get in the US with all-wheel drive. Front-wheel drives get the Panasonic 71.4 kilowatt hour total gross capacity battery pack. Now, in Europe, I believe all cars just get the Panasonic battery. And that's actually a good thing because the Panasonic smaller capacity battery charges 50% faster than the all-wheel drive car. So 150 kilowatt peak on the Panasonic battery, the front-wheel drive car in the US, 100 kilowatt rated peak on the all-wheel drive car in the US, which doesn't make much sense to me at all, but it is what it is. So, I think we need to go into this understanding that Toyota is a conservative company that has to basically uphold their longevity reputation. But I think we should also come out of this saying that we have torture tested some of the most stressed EVs on the market. You know, Tesla lets you use every bit of the battery pack, big charging rates at 250 kilowatts on a very similar size battery pack. And we've only lost, again, about 10% capacity in 100,000 plus miles of pure abuse, harder than what most people would do. And that's just based off of our own testing. So, you know, we need to go into this understanding Toyota's conservative, but do they really need to be? You tell me. Let's see what we're going to get into. So it's all about charging. So let me tell you how I set up the charging test, and then we'll look at the curve. Of course, with all of our DC fast charging curves, we're very conscious of temperature on plug-in, but we also start at 0% and go to 100. So many people in the industry are honing in on this 10 to 80 or 10 to 90. And personally, I think we need to see the full breadth of the curve. I have been to enough charging stations and witnessed enough of the public charging to know a lot of people plug in below 10% state of charge, and a lot of people charge way above 80% state of charge. And ideally, from our coverage, from our videos, you'd be able to pick your 10 to 80 and look at that curve, or 5 to 97, whatever you want. And so that's why we look at the entire charging curve. So what I did was right after we shot our out-of-spec overlanding, off-roading, soft-roading video with the bZ4X, which was hugely impressive. That X-Mode all-wheel drive system is awesome, and I highly encourage you to check out our sister channel, Out-of-Spec Overlanding. I'm actually back in California about to film for that channel over the next few days, so keep an eye on that for some really cool stuff. What we did was we off-roaded it, we drove it hard, not like ripping on it incredibly hard, but you know, enough to make sure the batteries are warm. It was still a warm day outside, and I drove it out to the desert where I normally do my 70 mile per hour highway range test. So I go to the Shell Country Market out there, I plug in, I'm like, great, plugging in at, I don't know, 8:45 in the evening, something like that. Like, as soon as it's done, I'm going to run my range test, charge it up, and then I'll go to bed at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Nothing out of the norm for me. And so that didn't happen. Because the car took so long to charge, it was physically impossible for me to actually make my flight in the next day, not even like super early in the morning, if I had charged to 100%. and did the full range test. So of course I couldn't leave on the range test without having a 100% completed battery pack. So I stayed for as long as I could for the DC fast charging test and got it up to 99%. But just so you know, I never did let the car complete, so we don't truly know how long it will take to full charge, but I will tell you it is the slowest charging EV I've ever tested by a very large margin. Okay, but that doesn't tell the full story either, because plugging in at low states of charge, Toyota says this thing's rated for 100 kilowatts, right? And that's not terrible. That's better than a Leaf. Well, because Leafs are hard to find 100 kilowatt CHAdeMO stations, you're going to be looking at 50 to 75 for most of those. And it's better than Bolt, which is 55 kilowatts. So let's go over to the data here and see what happened. Again, I drove the car down to 1% state of charge, ran the heater at max till it pulled off 1 and hit 0. That's how we do every charging test, so that the car's not under big load down low. It gets time to settle, cool off, get the temperatures, whatever it wants with the heater running maxed out. As soon as it dips to 0%, we plug it in. And that is a 0% indicated based off of the car metric. That doesn't show how much buffer you can actually drive below 0%. When we do that, that's when we do our 70 mile per hour highway range test. We go till the car stops moving, because a lot of manufacturers will hide driving range below 0. And I'm pretty sure Toyota's one of them, because the car felt pretty snappy even at 1%. You join me back at the office with these incredible views to thank Magna. Now, Magna is a technology company that produces not only parts for cars, but also technological solutions from manufacturing and design and engineering. They cover so many parts of the automotive sector, and I bet you've interacted with a Magna product in your life before. Magna actually is very near and dear to my heart, because their partnership, Magna Steyr in Austria, produced my first car, a Mini Countryman, and it was built right there in Graz. A lot of you are also familiar, Magna's going to be producing the Fisker Ocean in their Magna Steyr factory, and they also build G-Wagons, and nothing gets tougher than a G. So really excited about our partnership with Magna, of course. They are also hiring for engineers, so we know a lot of you guys are super interested in technology and automotive. I'll leave a link below so you can learn more about possible opportunities at Magna, but of course we want to thank them for sponsoring today's video and being such a huge supporter of Out of Spec. Truly, they are pushing mobility forwards responsibly and sustainably. So let's hit play, let's watch this thing. So plugging in to the DC fast charger, by the way, no plug-in charge, plugging in, hitting 86 kilowatts right off the bat. And right now I'm thinking like, awesome, we're just gonna climb our way up to that 100 kilowatts exactly as we wanted. But this is where we see our peak, 87 kilowatts. It takes, about 5 minutes. We're at 13% state of charge, not the end of the world, not bad. And 88 kilowatt indicated, that's our peak right there. After that, downhill we go. And pretty not exciting even at this moment, but still livable. 10 minutes for 25% of the battery pack isn't great. That's half as impressive, I would say, as Ioniq 5 or EV6, which again, same pricing category. Those are 10 minutes from 0 to 50% on very similar sized battery packs, but those are really incredibly pushing their packs. So that's okay. I think we're still in the reasonable range here, but now we're not. Anything under 80 kilowatts, or really, honestly, anything under 100, can I just say, not that impressive, not great. But we're in the 50 kilowatt range, in the 40%, a low 40%. It's like, oh my goodness, come on. So Toyota claims about 1 hour, 0 to 80% state of charge, or 10 to 80. I don't actually know which. I've seen conflicting reports. I'll tell you how long it took when we got there. So at 50% state of charge, we were doing exactly 50 kilowatts. Now, I had actually charged the bZ4X multiple times before this session and had logged, through screenshots throughout those. And I found that we were matching perfectly with my previous charging sessions, which shows no deviation due to temperature based off of this testing. You'll see the car stops charging right here, and that's because I actually set the maximum charging level in the car to 60% by accident. I forgot to raise it to max. And the one annoying thing is you can't raise it to max while you're DC charging. You have to unplug, then hit max charging rate or max charging state of charge, and then it'll charge to 100%. Other things to note, the car actually lets you charge off of peak rates. It's one of the few cars that lets you derate your DC fast charging performance. So you can go, instead of max, which would be in theory 100 kilowatts, you can limit it to 75 kilowatts or to 50 kilowatts. 68%, we're doing 30 kilowatts in real time right here. The one thing I want you to keep in mind is that number in the bottom left-hand corner of the Electrify America screen, that is charging power delivered to the car. That is not what's going into the battery pack. The bZ4X does not show you any information about charging other than how long it thinks it's going to take to hit your max charging peak. And I don't actually remember what it said when I plugged in here, but I plugged into another DC fast charger when I first got it at like 20 or 30%, and it said 7 hours to full charge. And I was like, wow, I think that's like getting confused with level 2. But it actually was just a 50 kilowatt charger, and that's, I think, honestly, how long it would take. Years makes no difference to full charge the thing. Probably a little bit less. But yeah, wow. Wait till you see what happens here. We are under 20 kilowatts at 78%. For reference, Ioniq 5 EV6 doing way deep, close to 200 kilowatts around here in that high 150 range. 80%, we're down to 17 kilowatts. And this is where, the longevity conversation starts to come in and starts to make more sense to me, because DC fast charging an electric vehicle at high states of charge is actually the hardest thing on it. For the most part, I see why Toyota's really cutting down here, but it's to the point where it's almost unusable to charge above 60 or 70% state of charge, which means on a road trip, you really want to plug in as dead as possible. You're going to be targeting 0% arrival at every charging station, ideally to maximize whatever you can get out of this thing. And, if you have to do a long stretch, if you have to do, for example, if you don't even have home charging and you have to DC fast charge your car, but you're about to leave on a trip, this is something where you just like plug it in, leave it overnight, and come grab it in the morning. And I don't recommend people doing that. The problem with this car is for those who need deep charges for whatever reason, will clog up charging stations. And my recommendation is, as soon as you hit about 85 or 90% state of charge, to actually pull your car off a fast charger, if you own one of these, and put it on a level 2 charger. Because at 90% state of charge, we've pretty much matched what the 6.6 kilowatt onboard charger can do for the car. So there's no benefit at being at a fast charging station above 90%. This is something you unplug, you go find a level 2 and plug into that. And hopefully it's very rare where you need the range, but I can count, in my last many years of EV ownership, at least 20 or maybe 25 times where I've needed to full charge my car to actually make it somewhere. And with more infrastructure going in, that's becoming less of an issue, of course. But it's not like this car gets great range anyway. It's rated at 222 miles EPA. In my testing, I found it, at least on the highway, to not match that, but I didn't do the 70 mile per hour highway test, so it wasn't a loop style. I can't really say for sure what it would do, but it's like now we're down 91% at 4 kilowatts, and I'm just going to take over and sort of scrub through this because it just goes on. At 94%, we hit 1 kilowatt and then it just sits at 1 kilowatt all the way to the GoPro died. And then I stayed there for like another hour or two, and it still was just at 99%, wasn't completing. And so, wow. Let's crunch some numbers. All right, so let's go over here to the charging curve. Here's what the curve looks like. So you can see plugging in, pack voltage is coming up, same current request would be my guess. We saw a peak of 88 kilowatts, although according to the data, we saw a peak of 87.82 kilowatts delivered to the car, not what's going into the battery pack. You have to take about 8 to 10% off of that number. The lower the charging power, the less losses there will be. So let's say 8% off of that number. I'd say we saw about 80 kilowatts, 82 kilowatts going into the battery. And then it just walks its way down this ledge nonstop until it hits 1 kilowatt and then just sits there till completion. I've never seen anything so bad before. I mean, the curve itself makes sense. I actually don't mind the shape of the curve. I just don't like where the numbers are. So let's take a look at some more information. It took 4.4 hours to not even complete charging. That was just from 0 to 99%. It's one of the only cars I've never waited around to actually full charge, and that's because I was just getting frustrated and tired. Peak charging rate, 87.82 kilowatts, and then the total energy delivered, 61 kilowatt hours. But let's take a look at this over here. If we look at from Toyota, it says 72.8 kilowatt hours total battery capacity, which means this is without buffers, without usable capacity. So you have to imagine they put some buffer at the top and some buffer at the bottom. And then there's probably even a hidden usable buffer below 0%, like Tesla does and others, where you can drive for a bit before it totally shuts off. And again, I believe that to be the case because it was still pretty snappy at 0, but then like it feels like you're using every bit of the top charge of the battery pack because of 1 kilowatt charging for so long. But I think that's just Toyota being conservative. Anyway, it sounds like this thing has huge buffers. And if I did the 70 mile per hour highway range test, which I really, really want to do as soon as possible, I just need to book a week to do it, I really want to know how far past 0 on a fresh battery pack will it go before it shuts off, again, at 70 miles an hour, because that would really give us an indication as to the buffer size usable and the non-usable buffer size, because we already know the total capacity of the pack. It just seems absolutely ridiculous that a large automaker such as Toyota would release something so bad, in my opinion. I'm sure we'll see people in the comment section who probably drive Bolts who can justify this, who have driven across the country in Bolts and like, this is the best thing ever. Just experience Ioniq 5 EV6, same price category. Experience ID4, which isn't nearly as impressive as those, and that's the same pricing category and actually cheaper in some cases. And the ID4 is very reasonable in terms of its charging performance, 125 kilowatt peak before we get this 135 kilowatt software update. Doesn't seem great to me. So bZ4X does not have route planning, it does not have plug-in charge, and it does not have battery preconditioning, the 3 things every EV needs. And you would think Toyota would know this and put it in there. It doesn't help the customer understand why things are happening from an EV perspective. They do give you 1 year of free charging with EV Go, which is pretty nice. But like, who's going to want to sit at a fast charger with this thing? This is a fantastic vehicle, don't get me wrong. It's a great car to drive. It's a great car to adventure in. It's going to be perfect for Colorado. It's built really well. The motors are calibrated well. It drives nicely. It's just not a road tripper. And that's the thing. It could be. Like, we have electric vehicles that are road trippers. Why Toyota couldn't make one, I don't know. And so this is really the car's Achilles heel. If the charging was great, I would recommend it to everyone. But I can only recommend this car, and I actually will recommend this car to people who only pretty much stay in their bubble and don't travel too far out. And if you need to fast charge here or there, just do it at low state to charge, hang out for a half hour, get up to 80%, whatever it is, and rock and roll. But man, this could have been so much better. And it shouldn't have to be from a large automaker that the car is really good, but the charging sucks. There shouldn't be a but with a large company like Toyota, and with their hybrid vehicles there isn't. Like, they build good stuff, but not here from a charging perspective. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts. Is this acceptable for your use case? I know we've had a lot of people interested in buying one of these. I've received a ton of emails from reservation holders, people who are trying to get one, and they say the charging's no issue. Let me know if this charging curve is an issue for your lifestyle or not. For me personally, it just writes off the car as not even able to recommend for most people, because most people take a road trip or two every year, and it's an expensive car. It's 50 grand. This isn't like, just, buy it as an extra commuter. This is a significant chunk of money here. So yeah, there you go. And cost, I should let you know, it costs about $18. I use the Electrify America Pass Plus membership, which is 31 cents per kilowatt hour. You pay $4 a month for that. Well worth it, in my opinion, for everyone. Thanks for watching another Out of Spec Reviews video. I'll leave the link to this file in the description below so you can play around with this spreadsheet. But there you have it. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.